Hi, I'm Tara, and welcome to Let's Do Books. You can email me at tara@thelesbianreview.com with any questions or comments, or come join our Facebook group, The Lesbian Review Book Club. Today I'm joined by Sheena, the founder and fearless leader of The Lesbian Review and the Lesbian Talk Show channel. Welcome, Sheena.
Thanks, Tara. I always get a kick out of being called the fearless leader of something. That's fun.
Well, you are. So, today we're doing something kind of special because we're talking about one of your very favorite themes in lesfic. So can you tell people what it is and why you love it so much?
Well, basically, it's cross-dressing women. And I love it so much because inevitably it tends to be kind of a period piece, or there's a reason why the woman has to dress like a man and pretend to be a man. And I love it because of the context around that. So when you have a lesbian romance, right, the inevitably femme woman will discover that the person she's attracted to isn't a man. And so there's all these fun kind of dynamics that go along with it. There's the woman having to get by pretending to be a man, and so all of the dynamics around that and the romantic dynamics that come with it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I just want to snuggle up with it.
Yeah, you do. So that's why I thought, like, how have we not actually done, on either of our shows, how have we not done a podcast about this? Let's do it. It's time.
Totally. I don't know what's wrong with us.
So I've chosen 3 books. You've chosen 3 books of our favorite lesfic with women pretending to be a man. So what's your first one that you've chosen?
Okay, I'm going to start off by saying I did not put this into an order because I actually cannot put these into an order because I just love these all so very, very much. But I'm just going to kind of start with the first one on my list, which is Sword of the Guardian by Mary Shannon. This is a fantasy novel published by Bold Strokes Books, and it's just beautiful. It's got the ugliest cover on earth. I must put that out there. I mean, this cover is, it does not represent fairly the actual wonderfulness of the story.
It's a bad cover.
It is. It's horrible.
It is.
Okay, and the problem with the bad cover on this book is the book itself is so awesome. Okay, but chapter 1 kind of sucks too. Unfortunately, chapter 1 is really kind of long and weird, and so you have to kind of get past that before you get to the real good story. So ignore the cover and ignore chapter 1 and just kind of plunge through because it's so worth it once you do that. So here's what it's about. Talon and her 2 younger sisters are part of a performing troupe. The troupe is hired as part of a celebration to mark the birthday of the royal twins, Shasta and her brother. This is in like a kingdom, right? An assassin tries to kill the twins and Talon manages to save the princess, getting stabbed in the process. The world is a brutal place for orphans, and Talon has to pretend to be a boy in order to protect her sisters. This causes a surprise for the priestess, who tends on Talon's wounds, and the priestess tells the king. The king concocts a scheme to protect his daughter and only remaining heir. He offers Talon the position as the princess's guardian. This is the perfect arrangement. Talon can sleep in the princess's chambers and ensure that she's always protected without threatening the princess's virtue. Haha. But only a handful of people know that Talon is a woman, and even Shasta is under the impression that Talon is a man. So suddenly this poor princess is thrust into the scenario where her guardian is like sleeping on the floor, the cot or something. So this man is sleeping in her room with her to protect her, and it's all very awkward. So she throws a little hiffy fit. It's just hilarious. Anyway, the setup is really well-rounded love story set to the backdrop of a religious and civil war. What Mary Shannon did so brilliantly in this fantasy is she built this amazing world. And, I mean, it's really got everything you could possibly want in a fantasy except maybe dragons. Yeah.
That is such a good one.
Mm-hmm. There's also a romance that happens between Shasta and the princess, but that only happens sort of later in the book. First, there's this delightful antagonistic feelings from Shasta towards Talon, which is just so perfect.
And it has a sequel, which does not have somebody pretending to be a man, but the sequel is just as good. So it's hard to find really good lesbian fantasy fiction. So the series is definitely good to pick up.
The sequel, though, is very different from the first book. It's 2 different main characters. So you see the 2 main characters from book 1 as side characters in the second book. The first book is a kind of a butch femme romance. The second book is a much more femme romance.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great. I mean, it really is a fantastic read. Well worth it.
So, my first choice is actually a contemporary novel. It's called Princess Deception by Nell Stark. So this is the third book in her Princess series. And apart from the cross-dressing, where it's a little bit different from the other books in the series, is that this is actually a reinterpretation of Twelfth Night, the play by Shakespeare. So it has actually even a little bit of a different feel to it. So the synopsis is, when Sebastian, the Crown Prince of Belgium, overdoses on heroin shortly before he is set to launch Belgium's campaign to host the FIFA World Cup soccer tournament, his family manages to hush up the scandal. While the royals are debating how to proceed, Sebastian's twin sister Viola decides to impersonate him to keep Belgium's bid hopes alive. Missy Duke is a freelance reporter covering Belgium's World Cup bid. A former women's soccer player whose career was sidelined by injury, she is now trying to break into the male-dominated sportscasting world. While in Belgium, she meets the imposter Sebastian and soon realizes that he is actually Viola. Sensing a big story in the making, Duke feigns ignorance and plays along with the charade. Real sparks develop between the two women, but will the double deception doom this fairy tale romance? So, this book I actually thought was, like, super cute and kind of angsty, but, like, the good angsty in the right spots. And I think the thing that I liked was that, like, there is so much deception happening in this book, but it was for the right reasons, especially on the part of Viola. Because she really is, like, she wants her brother to have the best chance of recovering because he goes into this, like, fancy pants rehab in Switzerland or something like that, and he's going to have a hard time with his recovery if, you know, the paparazzi is all over his ass. So she does this thing that, and, you know, they are twins and as close to identical as I guess you can be when one of you is a man and one of you is a woman. And I thought, the funny thing is, I thought from the synopsis that it would be a while before Duke figures it out, but she actually figures it out pretty quickly. And so that makes it all the more fun with the double deception of Missy saying, like, I know this is who this is. And kind of the, so what happens kind of around that and playing with gender and attraction. And because she actually is attracted to Viola from the first, even when she first thinks that it's Sebastian, and it's a little confusing for her because she's a lesbian and she's not bi. And so it just leads to a lot of fun stuff. And, you know, it has that lovely happily ever after that always comes with a Nell Stark princess book.
Definitely on my to-read list. I'm actually kind of sad I haven't read it yet. One of the things about this category, though, is the authors have to sell it to us. There has to be a good reason why this woman is pretending to be a man, right? And your thing where she's attracted to so the femme is attracted to the cross-dressing woman when she thinks he's a he. Wow, that's so complicated to try and explain, but that concept, right, is one of the reasons that I absolutely love Depths of Blue by Lise MacTague, which is my next book. Because there is this chemistry between the two main characters, and then the one is very confused because she's only ever attracted to women. So what is she doing being attracted to this man now? And that adds such a beautiful layer of complication to the whole story. So this Depths of Blue by Lise MacTague is published by Bella Books. And it's about Jack and Torrin. Torrin is a smuggler who's always looking for the next big score. When she hears about a civil war on a relatively isolated planet, she can't help but see the money she can make. Jack is one of the best snipers in the male-only army. Hiding the fact that she's a woman is not always easy, but it's necessary. Little does she know that her mission is to kill an off-world smuggler, and it will lead to big decisions and an unexpected attraction. This novel is about the life and death adventure of the two women who need to fight their way through enemy territory, battle fatigue, and the local wildlife. And that's only the first half of the novel. So this is a sci-fi novel set on a blue planet. Lise MacTague does amazing world building. I'm not a huge fan of sci-fi because I find that they tend to get bogged down by all these like scientific-y things and stuff, trying to explain, how spaceships work or whatever it is. But this particular one was beautiful. It's an adventure romance first and foremost.
Yeah, and they're both pretty hot.
Yeah.
That's my whole profound thought. No, it's been a while since I read it, so I don't really remember it very well, except just that it's really fun. And it kind of gives that feel of a military novel, even though so it is kind of more of that like military sci-fi, like drawing on that tradition.
I'd call it more an adventure. Like, I get what you mean by the military sci-fi, but there's not a lot of like military ops or any of that sort of stuff happening. But what there is a lot of is the adventure, them trying to get away from the bad guys, them trying to survive, them trying to hide from, their pursuers. Like, there's a lot of that sort of thing, which is great fun.
I'm trying to remember, do we get much of Jack's backstory in that book, or does it come later?
We get some. We know about her brother. We know why she's choosing to dress like a man.
Yeah, that's right. So I thought that stuff was really well done too, like getting that kind of inner landscape and what is it that motivates her to like pick up this life and do this rather than the alternative without giving too much away.
Yeah. And what Lise does particularly well is writes chemistry between women. And the chemistry in this book is off the charts. And when Torrin finally realizes that Jack is not actually a man, well, let's just say that's rather explosive.
Oh, yes. It sure is. So my next book is The Escape Artist by Judith Katz, which is a Jewish lesbian historical novel. And while it has romance, I wouldn't say that this is a romance. It's much more a historical novel before it is like a historical romance or anything like that. So for this one, it's 1913, and Sophia Teitelbaum is a really sweet 16-year-old living in Poland. Her family is not wealthy, but, she's pretty happy, and she's in love with her best friend Tamar, even though they're not, like, in a romantic relationship. Out of nowhere one day, her parents are drawn in by Tutzik Goldenberg, an Argentina-based diamond merchant who claims that marrying Sophia is the only cure for his loneliness. They might think they're saving Sophia from the dangers of living as a Jewish girl at the time, but Tutzik actually has other plans, and like the many other girls whose families he's tricked before, he dumps her in his sister's brothel as soon as they arrive in Buenos Aires. Now, Tutzik hates Buenos Aires, and he longs for home in Poland, and his visits to scout for new prostitutes are kind of the only reprieve for him. His sister Pearl takes care of him, but she allows him control over nothing. So when he sees Hankus Lubarski, a brilliant and handsome street magician and escape artist, he knows that Hankus is the ticket for Tutzik to get out from under his sister's thumb. He just has to convince Hankus that he needs a manager. But Hankus has his own secrets, and the biggest is that he is actually a girl, Hannah Lubarski. So Hankus and Sophia fall in love together, but what are they going to do? Because they need to actually get out of the Jewish underworld of Buenos Aires. This book is gorgeous. It's so beautifully written, even as, there's some difficult stuff that happens. Because, obviously it's not like Sophia wants to be in that brothel. But what grows between her and Hankus is really lovely. And it's been a little while since I've read this one, and I probably should have refreshed, but I believe it was that, Hankus was orphaned when she was, even when we're reading the scenes with Hankus as a woman, she still goes by that name. Hankus was orphaned when she was a child, and she was raised by two brothers, and I can't remember if they were her uncles or something like that, but because it would have been weird for these men and no woman in the house to be raising a little girl, they just had to dress up as a boy. And she kind of stuck with it. And she started doing little bits of magic at illusion. And she was really good at it. And then got better and better and built it so that when she ends up in Buenos Aires, she's this really, she's so talented. And Tutzik really does see something there so that Hankus could be the next huge, like a Houdini level. And so it's very cool, but there is that are they or aren't they going to be able to get away? Are they going to be able to get out of this atmosphere? Are they going to be able to have a way to survive together? Because Tutzik is not a good person, possibly a psychopath, or something like that. So yeah, this is if you like really exquisitely written prose, this is a book that I recommend, on top of for being part of this theme.
This is the problem, Tara, man. Now I have another book I need to read. I should never podcast with you. You make my reading list too long.
You say that as though you've never done that to me before.
Well, that's true. Alright, so my next one is Crossing the Wide Forever by Missouri Vaun, which I actually loved so much that I went and made it the August 2018 book club read. It's published by Bold Strokes Books, and it's just beautiful. Cody escapes her father's beatings by taking her sister and running away from home. She drops her sister with their aunt and embarks on a journey out of Arkansas towards California. The road is dangerous though, so she dresses like a man as protection. This is set during the Western expansion in the US. Just on a side note. Lily departs from the great city of New York after her uncle dies and leaves her a homestead on the frontier of Kansas. With the prospect of becoming the local school teacher for a tiny town near her homestead, she heads west, despite her well-off family's protestations. What Lily doesn't disclose to her family is how little she desires to follow the traditional path of marriage, and she just cannot understand why her sisters swoon over handsome boys. Cody and Lily meet in Independence, Missouri, and their stories become intertwined as fate pushes them together. But that's just the beginning of the story. Sprinkle in some adventure, a sizzling, slow-burn romance, and some unexpected characters, and you have a great read. I definitely got better at writing synopses.
You did. You're real good at it now.
Anyway, so that's my third book choice, and it's beautiful, and if you haven't read it, you absolutely should go out and get this book. It's quite a nice length too, and it's unexpected. It's an unexpected read. It's not like very formulaic, which I like.
She's so good and writes so many very different things, because at this point she's done sci-fi, historical, contemporary, and then rom-com. And she's equally good at all of them. It's a little bit disgusting.
She's also a really great artist. So the cover of the book she did herself. And she was telling us in the book club chat that she had her wife pose for the pose of Lily's pose.
Oh.
And the way she describes the art in this book is phenomenal, because Lily's an artist. And she does these watercolor landscapes, and just the way she talks about the art, you can see she's an artist. I mean, it's so beautiful.
That's right. For people that don't know, she's also Paige Braddock, who's been doing the long-running... Now I can't do words. She's Paige Braddock, who's been doing the long-running comic Jane's World, which has been around since I think like 1991 or something like that.
Yeah, I think she's just celebrating like her 20 years or something like that on it. Something like big.
She's so cool.
She is, and she's such a sweetheart. She's such a really nice person. So, but this book is amazing. So go read this book. This was one of my favorites last year.
So my last book is one that I read very recently, and it's another historical, but this one is actually takes place during the English Regency. So it's a Regency romance, and it's called The Covert Captain, or A Marriage of Equals by Jeannelle M. Ferreira. So the synopsis is, which I'm stealing from Heather's from her review because she wrote an excellent synopsis for this one. Captain Nathaniel Fleming comes home from the Battle of Waterloo traumatized by the war, struggling on a peacetime half-pay salary, and still carrying the secret held since the day of enlistment that Nathaniel is actually Eleanor. An invitation from Captain Fleming's former commanding officer, Major Sherburne, to stay at his estate becomes complicated when Sherburne's spinster sister Harriet and the captain find a tentative, prickly friendship turning into something much more. Now Fleming must decide whether to risk her secret and both of their reputations on the chance that Harriet can love Eleanor as much as she does Nathaniel. This book is gorgeous. So, I read so many Regency romances growing up that it's a little bit gross. I love them. And there's so many of them in mainstream romance. And there are so few of them in lesbian romance that it's really kind of a shame and it's quite sad. And so when Heather reviewed this, I went out and bought it immediately. And then for some reason I don't understand, I didn't read it for a few months. And I should have read it as soon as I bought it because this book is so good. It's so good. And the cross-dressing aspect, it works really well because she gives kind of a really excellent reason that works within the historical context for why someone would want to cross-dress. And Heather actually talked about this on an episode of this podcast, which is a fabulous podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, I was just sitting there rapt listening to her talking to me the whole time because it's 5 reasons why the English Regency is the perfect setting for lesbian romance. And she definitely had me convinced. Mm-hmm. And with this one, it really was possible. And it really does make sense. And I think she posted an article recently. If it wasn't her, it was somebody else that pointed out. Because the thing that will come up often is like, oh, come on. How could women have really passed as men? How could that have possibly been possible? Glasses, like eyeglasses, weren't the normal for everybody to have until probably about 70 years ago. There were a lot of people that couldn't, and I don't know, I guess I just found that really interesting. I'm going off on, like, way off on a tangent when I should really just be saying, read this book. This book is good. I'm
going to disagree with you for a second there. Don't read this book. Listen to this book because this is a brilliant audiobook. Now, here's the one small little thing that might put people off is the narrator's American for this audiobook. But having said that, it actually didn't affect my listening experience at all. In fact, I preferred listening to it to reading it. I started reading it, but I'm not used to Regency romance, so the language was a little bit tough for me to get into reading it. But when I started listening to it, it was like a whole different experience. And I just tore through the audiobook in no time at all. It was one of those cases where I didn't want to sit and work. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to sit there and listen to the audiobook because it was so yummy. And what she also did, like, particularly brilliantly in this book was she had a little glimpse of the queer culture. There was a little piece where the one character takes the other character off to this little, like, hangout where they hang out with other queer people. And that was so cool too. Yeah, I just loved this book. I thought this book was amazing. I love that it wasn't the norm. It went, we're going to do a Regency romance and we're going to do it properly with all the weird language and whatnot. Mm-hmm. You know, which was great. This is a book that doesn't care if you understand all the words being used.
And I liked that about it because I think often in Regency romances, it is softened for readers so that they're easier to get into. This one isn't, so I used the lookup function on my Kindle quite a lot with it, but I just thought it worked because it gave it that authenticity so that it doesn't feel like a Regency romance being written now. It feels like a book that could have been written during the Regency.
Right, which worked so really well. And this is why I say audiobook, because you then get it in a contextualized thing where somebody's telling you the story. So that worked beautifully for me. I did struggle a little bit. I just started the book, and I was just like, it's a little, like, tough. But Heather's review was so compelling that I tried again with the audio. Heather did an excellent job with reviewing this book, and I absolutely agree with her. This is a must read, or must listen in my case.
Mm-hmm. Those are all my books.
Okay, so my 4th book, and your 4th book, because we both agree on this book, is Backwards to Oregon by Jay.
Yes.
Published by Ilva Publishing. Nora has been a prostitute for 3 years, living as Fleur, the highest paid girl working for Tess. She can afford to keep her daughter safe, but not for long. Tess asks her one night to take care of Luke and keep an open mind, but she doesn't learn what Tess means because Luke won't let her touch him. He seems kind enough, however, so she accepts his offer of marriage and a new life in Oregon a couple of days later, because Luke's going across, he's doing the Groot track. I don't know what that is in American.
He's going on the Oregon Trail.
Yes, that. Luke is a man with a secret, and man is in inverted commas. He's actually a woman, and no one can ever know. Having seen how good Nora is with her daughter, Luke sees an opportunity. If she marries Nora, she can give her and Amy a chance at a life away from the brothel, while giving herself an even better chance of passing as a man on the wagon trail. So I think you wrote this one. This
I did.
Synopsis, yes. And so it's quite far into the book before Luke is discovered as a man.
Super far.
Yeah. And so there's this strange kind of relationship between these two women, because Luke keeps a distance, but at the same time they have to pretend to be this married couple with like a kid. And so Luke almost bonds with, what's the kid's name again? Amy. So Luke bonds with Amy almost more readily than she does with Nora initially, because there's this adorable like bonding over a horse. She lets Amy choose the name for her horse, and her because Amy's this cute little girl, and Amy ends up calling her Measles, the horse Measles or something, and it's because it's got spots, and it's beautiful. And I loved the way Jay did that, because you almost believe more that that's how it would happen because kids are so open, you know? So there was a believability to that. And then finally, when Nora and Luke kind of connect, it's almost like explosive. It's just beautiful. And it was just, it's the perfect read like this, right? So, yes, everybody should read this one also. Don't you think?
Absolutely. It's so good. I think it might be Jay's best book. I don't know. It's kind of the one when people ask, where should you start with her? If you like historicals, definitely start there. If you don't like historicals, maybe start there anyway, because it's so good that you're probably going to love it anyway.
You know, the thing about historicals, people seem to have this feeling that they're going to be like long and schleppy and trudging through a lot of like history and whatever it is. It's actually not true. All it is the good ones just take place in a time where things were different. Like right now, this story wouldn't make any sense in the contemporary setting.
No, and I think that's why they're like, yeah, if you look at the books we've talked about so far, most of them have been historicals. We've had one sci-fi, because it can totally work in sci-fi, and then we had one contemporary, and it only worked as a contemporary because, like, I don't think it would have worked if it weren't that rewrite of Shakespeare. Like, it was very much the author was doing a thing.
Yep. Once again, it comes back to you need a plausible reason why this is going to work. And you also need, like, another reason that I would believe it more in a historical setting, that a woman would get away with being confused as a man, right, is not just the whole eyesight thing, which is true, but also because it's so unexpected. It's not expected that a woman would dress as a man, right? So it probably wouldn't even occur to people most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, then very quickly I got 2 shout-outs. I got a shout-out from April, who loved Cavalcade by K. and Meinel, published by Shadow Publishing. And I've got a shout-out. It's also, you know, Oregon Trail, rugged terrain, woman pretending to be a man kind of a thing. And I got from Brooklyn, The Spanish Pearl by Catherine Friend, which is set in a split between the 21st century and 1085.
I haven't read it. I've heard it's fabulous.
Yes, it's on my to-read list, published by Bold Strokes Books, and those are apparently 2 really good ones as well. So that is a fantastic list for anybody looking to get started in this sector.
I agree. That is all for this episode. Thank you so much, Sheena, for joining me and bringing your passion and enthusiasm for this theme.
You're welcome.
So, I'm Tara. You've been listening to Let's Do Books. Remember to email me at tara@thelesbianreview.com with your questions or comments. If you're an author who's interested in joining me on the show to talk about the lesfic you love or the trends that have you interested, please let me know. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out the show notes where you'll find a Patreon link for the Lesbian Talk Show. Patrons get exclusive content that no one else does, like bonus audios from other shows all across the channel. Don't forget to join us at our Facebook group, the Lesbian Review Book Club, so you can talk to us about anything that you're reading and loving, including these books that we've just recommended to you. You can also find me and all the other podcasters on the Lesbian Talk Show channel at our Facebook group, the Lesbian Talk Show chat group. To find this and many other great shows, all you need to do is search for the Lesbian Talk Show on iTunes, Podbean, or Stitcher. We did it!
Yay! Why are you laughing?
I'm trying not to laugh so that I can cut it out later.